What if Adam wasn't the first? What if the Garden of Eden wasn't the beginning, but the aftermath of something far older and far darker? In the opening line of Genesis, we read, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth." But the very next verse tells us the earth was without form and void, and darkness covered the deep. That's not creation. That's devastation. The Hebrew phrase tohu vibohu, used only when God's judgment is enacted, raises a chilling question. What was judged before Adam even existed? Job 38 speaks of the sons of God shouting for joy as the earth's foundations were laid. But Adam hadn't yet been formed. So who were these sons of God? Could there have been an ancient civilization, a cosmic war, before the fall of Adam? What if the serpent in Eden wasn't an intruder but a survivor? This is the hidden history, the lost story of the world before the world. It's a story buried between the lines of Genesis, where something divine fell and something ancient died. Welcome to Channel, where we uncover the sealed secrets of the Scriptures, revealing forgotten truths, prophetic mysteries, and divine revelations that have long been erased from memory. The true beginning begins here. Have you ever felt there's something hidden just beneath the surface of the Bible? Something more than what you've been taught? You're right, and we're about to uncover it. So subscribe, share this journey, and prepare to view the Scriptures in a whole new light. Once you realize that a world existed before Adam, you'll never look at Genesis the same way again. Let's dive into Chapter 1. The gap in Genesis. It starts innocently enough. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. But then comes a seismic shift, and the earth was without form and void. Wait, what happened between verse 1 and verse 2? In the original Hebrew, Genesis 1 verse 2 says, "Veretz haida tohu vibohu," and the earth became formless and void. But here's the thing. Tohu vibohu doesn't refer to a blank canvas for creation. It's a phrase that's only used in Scripture when describing destruction or judgment. Isaiah 34 uses it to depict a land wiped out by wrath. Jeremiah 4 uses it to show a city reduced to ruin. So, it's not about a fresh start, it's about a catastrophic aftermath. The real question isn't what God created in Genesis 1 verse 1, but what happened in between that left the earth in ruins. This is where the gap theory enters the scene. Biblical scholars, early church fathers, Jewish mystics, and even modern theologians have suggested that between Genesis 1 verse 1 and 1:2, there was not just a grammatical gap, but a cosmic one. A forgotten chapter of history, lost to time but still echoing through the Scriptures. Get ready to uncover a hidden truth buried in the beginning. The answers may just change everything you thought you knew about the Bible. What if Genesis doesn't begin with creation, but with a divine aftermath? What if the world we know came after a judgment, a lost war, a rebellion long buried in the pages of history? Scripture tells us that God is not the author of confusion, 1 Corinthians 14 verse 33. Yet in Genesis 1 verse 2, we encounter just that, formless chaos, darkness, and void. This raises a troubling question. Could Genesis begin not with creation, but with the aftermath of something catastrophic? Ancient Jewish traditions, preserved in early midrashic texts, suggest a stunning possibility. God created multiple worlds before this one and destroyed them. A cosmic story lost in time, pointing to a rebellion and judgment before Adam ever walked the earth. The Bible might be hiding a deeper narrative, one of creation, destruction, and divine reckoning. What if the story of the world we know began after a great fall, not at the beginning, but in the space between two verses? Why was the world in such chaos? Could it be that the earth was not a blank slate but the remnants of a destroyed creation? According to ancient Jewish texts like Bereshit Rabbah 3.7, God created worlds before this one, only to destroy them due to corruption, inhabited by rebellious spiritual beings. He then formed this world, declaring it good, yet something darker preceded it. If Genesis 1 verse 2 describes not creation but desolation, what caused this destruction? Early church fathers such as Origen and Augustine speculated that the fall of Lucifer, a cosmic rebellion in heaven, could be the source. A war so vast it spilled into the visible world, leaving only ruin and a darkened earth. Ezekiel 28 verses 13 to 15 speaks of a being in Eden, blameless until wickedness was found in him. But how was this being in Eden before Adam? Unless Eden, the first Eden, existed before mankind's creation. What if the true origin of Earth's chaos wasn't a natural event, but a supernatural judgment, a fall of celestial beings, long before Adam? If so, Adam wasn't the beginning. He was the restart after a cosmic catastrophe. Adam was not placed in an empty world. He was planted amidst the ashes of one. Suddenly, the story shifts. Genesis is no longer just the beginning. It becomes a redemption story from the very start. But who were the beings that came before Adam? What part did they play in Earth's forgotten history? Prepare to journey deeper, because in the next chapter, we encounter the sons of God, ancient beings who were present long before the creation of Adam. Chapter 2, Before Adam. Job 38 verse 7 reveals, when the morning stars sang together and all the sons of God shouted for joy. But hold on. If Adam was the first man, who were these sons of God already rejoicing at the creation of the earth? This verse, hidden in plain sight, cracks open our understanding of time. Before Eden bloomed, before dust was shaped into man, there were others watching and rejoicing. These B'nai Ha-Elohim, sons of God, appear not just in Job, but in Genesis 6, Psalms, and Daniel. They are not mere metaphor or myth, they are ancient, celestial beings. But not all remained loyal. According to the ancient Book of Enoch, a revered text among early Jews and even quoted in the New Testament, a group of them, called the Watchers, descended and played a darker role in Earth's early history. The mystery deepens. Originally sent by God to guard and oversee the earth, the Watchers were celestial stewards, neither demons nor fallen beings, but trusted sentinels appointed with divine responsibility. But something went wrong. The Book of Enoch names these beings, 200 in total, led by their chief, Semjaza. They descended upon Mount Hermon, breaking the ancient boundary between the divine and the human realm. There, they saw the daughters of men and took them as wives, teaching them forbidden knowledge, secrets never meant for mortals. From this union came something unnatural, not fully angel nor fully human, but giants, the Nephilim. And all of this began with a betrayal. The Watchers weren't always the stuff of myth. They were rebels, once holy beings with heaven's DNA. But over time, they abandoned their sacred duty. What began as guardianship transformed into obsession. What started as loyalty evolved into lust. Here's the twist. The very name Watcher implies not only observation but also protection and judgment. They were more than mere spectators. They had authority and divine mandates. This means that the world before Adam wasn't simply an empty void. It was being managed by powerful, intelligent beings. The earth was not an uninhabited wilderness, but a realm under divine governance, until it all unraveled, and some of the watchers fell. Some scholars propose that their rebellion may have contributed to the chaos described in Genesis 1-2, sparking the catastrophic devastation that left the earth in a state of darkness and void. Their fall was so destructive that God would later imprison them in the abyss, bound in chains in gloomy darkness, awaiting the final judgment. Jude 1 verse 6. But what if traces of their influence still linger in our world today? Ancient structures, forbidden technology, relics that defy the known timeline. Perhaps their presence has never truly left. They walked this earth before us, and some believe they are still trying to return. So before you assume Adam was placed alone into an untouched world, consider this. What if he entered a realm already haunted by the remnants of their fall? In the next chapter, we explore the Nephilim being so dangerous that God chose to flood the earth. Chapter 3, The Nephilim Invasion. Genesis 6 verse 4 tells us, there were giants on the earth in those days and also afterward. The Bible calls them the Nephilim, a term derived from the Hebrew root nephil, meaning to fall. They were literally the fallen ones, not fallen like angels nor fallen like men, but fallen like hybrids, born from rebellion, shaped by violation, creatures never meant to exist. Heavenly DNA combined with earthly wombs, granting them unnatural strength and power. The Nephilim were the offspring of the Watchers, rogue sons of God who breached the divine human boundary. Their existence was no accident. It was the result of deliberate corruption. These giants were not just physically imposing. They were predators, violent and chaotic. Genesis 6 verse 11 tells us, the earth was filled with violence, using the Hebrew word chamas, which implies lawlessness, brutality, and utter chaos. These giants didn't just pose a threat to human civilization. They threatened the very fabric of God's plan. In the beginning, God said, "Let us make man in our image." But what happens when that divine image is genetically hijacked? The Nephilim were not merely giants. They were a direct attack on the purity of humanity. They defiled bloodlines, erased boundaries, and introduced something into creation that could not be redeemed. Noah wasn't just a righteous man. He was untainted, genetically untouched by the Nephilim. Genesis 6 verse 9 tells us that Noah was tamim, the same word used to describe a spotless sacrificial lamb. This wasn't just about moral character. It was about purity. Noah's lineage had not been corrupted by the hybrid influence of the Nephilim. He was the last true man, the last unspoiled vessel through whom God could fulfill his covenant with humanity. And so, God made a terrifying decision. I will wipe mankind from the face of the earth. Genesis 6 verse 7. The flood wasn't merely about sin, it wasn't just about judgment. It was about resetting the human genome. The earth had become something unrecognizable, a hybridized world where abominations reigned. The ark wasn't just a boat. It was a genetic safeguard, a womb floating on the waters of divine wrath. Every creature taken aboard was chosen with a singular purpose: to preserve what remained untainted, to protect the breath of life for restoration. The Nephilim were wiped away, or were they? Genesis 6 verse 4 offers a chilling note. And also afterward, the Nephilim returned. What does that mean? How could this be? The mystery deepens, and it leads us into the next chapter of human history, where giants again walk among kings and empires crumble beneath their shadow. But before we venture into that, we must first understand the flood not as an end, but as the beginning of something far more calculated. Was the flood truly a punishment, or was it a divine reset? A necessary act to quarantine what had come before? In Chapter 4, we will explore a more controversial idea. Did God recreate the world to preserve what was still human? Genesis 6 verse 5 reveals that the earth had become irreparably altered, not just by sin, but by something far darker. The wickedness of man was no longer just moral, it had been genetically warped. A dark convergence had unfolded: spiritual rebellion, genetic corruption, and the rise of a hybrid race that shattered the boundaries between heaven and earth. God's response wasn't a simple act of judgment. It was a cosmic reset. Genesis 6 verse 7 states, "I will blot out man whom I have created from the face of the land, for I am grieved that I have made them." These words aren't born of wrath but of sorrow. A creator watching his masterpiece devolve into something unrecognizable. This was not just punishment. It was divine surgery. It was the mercy of a new beginning. The flood, the ancient, global deluge, wasn't merely a judgment. It was a divine purge, a burial of an entire corrupted civilization. God didn't just flood sin, he buried it. We often imagine the flood as a boat floating on rain, but Scripture paints a far more terrifying picture. The fountains of the great deep burst forth, and the windows of heaven were opened. Genesis 7 verse 11. This was no gentle downpour. It was violence from above and below, a collision of divine fury and tectonic chaos. Mountains were swallowed, cities erased, names forgotten, histories drowned. Imagine the towers, the technologies, the languages, all of it wiped out in a matter of weeks, vanished from memory. But if the Nephilim had embedded themselves deep into the fabric of this civilization, the flood was more than a reset. It was a containment strategy. Noah and his family, 8 souls, weren't simply spared. They were preserved. God wasn't just saving a random remnant. He was protecting the bloodline, the DNA, the very seed that would carry the Messiah. Even in the devastation, there was purpose. Beneath the torrent of destruction, a divine plan was at work, ensuring that the promise of redemption would endure. An unbreakable covenant. In the midst of chaos, there was a divine choreography. The ark was not just a vessel of rescue. It was a floating garden, a sanctuary of life, navigating through the waters of judgment while carrying forward what was still sacred. It wasn't just animals that found refuge aboard. It was memory. It was language. It was destiny. Let this settle in your heart. Everything before the flood, every monument, every voice, every king, every name, is gone. A civilization buried, not just in sediment, but in profound silence. But here's the twist. Genesis 6 verse 4 subtly whispers, and also afterward, indicating the Nephilim returned. The corruption endured. The war didn't end. This raises a haunting question. What else survived the flood? What remnants of the past, hidden and waiting, are now returning? In the next chapter, we'll trace the shadows they left behind. Megalithic ruins, ancient myths, lost technologies. These may not be just legends. They could be echoes from the world before Adam, still resonating in our own. Chapter 5. Lost Civilizations and Forbidden Knowledge. What has been will be again. What has been done will be done again. There is nothing new under the sun. Ecclesiastes 1 verse 9. We often believe we are the pinnacle of human achievement, that modern civilization stands at the zenith of mankind's progress. But what if we're not the first? What if we're the rebuild, constructed atop the ruins of something far older? Around the world, myths echo from the dust of forgotten ages. Ancient Egypt speaks of a golden age ruled by gods before the pharaohs ever rose. The Sumerians recorded kings who ruled for thousands of years before the Great Flood. Mayan glyphs whisper of civilizations destroyed by divine fire and water. And then, there's Atlantis, Plato's description of a technologically advanced empire, rich with knowledge and power, swallowed by the sea in a single day and night. Was this fantasy or the fragmented memory of a forgotten truth? Every myth begins with a memory. Let's talk about architecture. How do we explain the megalithic structures that defy time and logic? The Great Pyramid of Giza, perfectly aligned with the stars, built with mathematical precision that still stuns modern engineers. Baalbek, Lebanon, with stones weighing over 1,000 tons, moved without the aid of modern machinery. Göbekli Tepe, where structures predate recorded history by thousands of years. What if these ancient wonders are not anomalies, but remnants of a forgotten world? What if the ruins we've unearthed are not just the bones of a lost civilization, but traces of a deeper, older truth waiting to be rediscovered? A site older than any known civilization with carvings no hunter-gatherer should have been able to make. These aren't scattered anomalies. They're the bones of something older and greater. The Bible doesn't record these civilizations in detail, but it does whisper their traces. Genesis 6-4 says the Nephilim were in the earth in those days and also afterward. That phrase, "and also afterward," is the key. It suggests survival, persistence, a remnant of that hybrid world, carried through the flood and embedded into post-Diluvian memory. What we call mythology may be the traumatized recollections of survivors. Stories reshaped over centuries into tales of gods, titans, and monsters. But maybe they weren't gods. Maybe they were the Nephilim in armor on thrones worshipped by men too afraid to resist. And maybe their technology wasn't magic, but forbidden knowledge passed down from the Watchers. The Book of Enoch says they taught men metallurgy, weaponry, enchantments, astronomy, things far beyond the age of stone. And what about Eden? If these ancient ruins are echoes of pre-flood brilliance, then where is Eden in all this? Could Eden have been the center of this first world, the original seat of divine-human interaction now erased or sealed? Could the longing in every ancient myth for a lost paradise be a fractured memory of the garden mankind was cast out from? And if so, we must ask, did God bury Eden? Or did he protect it? Is it hidden from history or hidden from the unholy? In Chapter 6, we descend deeper into the fall of Lucifer himself and the cosmic war that may have triggered the ruin of that forgotten world. Because before man fell in Eden, another being fell from heaven, and the shockwaves never stopped. Chapter 6. The Fall of Lucifer. Before Adam ever opened his eyes, before Eden bloomed, before the serpent slithered through the trees, he had already fallen. How you are fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning. Isaiah 14.12. Lucifer's fall was not a garden story. It was a celestial rebellion, a cosmic insurrection that shattered the harmony of heaven itself. He was once glorious. Ezekiel 28 paints the portrait. You were the seal of perfection, full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. You were in Eden, the garden of God. You were anointed as a guardian cherub. But Eden here is not the Eden of Adam. This is a heavenly Eden, the throne space of God, a realm of radiant stones and burning holiness. Lucifer wasn't created evil. He was majestic, exalted, a worship leader among the heavenly host. But pride fermented in his heart. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will make myself like the Most High. Isaiah 14.14. He didn't want to serve, he wanted to rule, and so war broke out. And there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon. Revelation 12.7. The serpent didn't sneak in. He had already fallen. He was not an invader in Eden. He was an exile cast down to earth with fury, bringing with him a third of the stars, a third of the angelic host. But woe to the earth and the sea, because the devil has gone down to you. Revelation 12.12. Earth was not his target. Earth was his prison. But here's the twist. Some scholars and ancient commentators believe that Lucifer ruled a kingdom before Adam, a pre-Adamic world over which he had dominion until his rebellion corrupted it and brought judgment. This aligns with the mysterious chaos of Genesis 1.2. The earth became formless and void. If Lucifer was cast down before man was made, what did he fall into? Some propose that the chaotic wasteland of Genesis 1.2 was the shattered remains of Lucifer's failed dominion. A kingdom reduced to rubble, a throne buried in darkness. This explains why the serpent had such confidence, such cunning, such ancient knowledge. He wasn't guessing. He knew what was at stake. He had once stood near God's throne. Now he slithered near man's. Lucifer's goal wasn't just to deceive Adam and Eve. It was to reclaim access to what he lost through the very creatures made in the image of the one who cast him down. Every temptation in Eden was retaliation. Every whisper from the serpent carried centuries of bitterness. But why was he allowed to remain on earth? Why didn't God destroy him immediately? Because the war wasn't over. It was transferred to a new battlefield, humanity. And the question now becomes, was Adam placed in Eden to rule the earth or to finish the war? Lucifer started. In chapter 7 we discover the shocking truth. Adam wasn't the beginning, he was the countermeasure. Chapter 7. Adam, not the first but the next. Then the Lord God formed the man of dust from the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. Genesis 2.7. The image is intimate, sacred. God shaping man from the dust with his own hands. But pause and ask, what kind of dust was it? Clean, pure, untouched? No. The dust came from an earth that had already seen darkness. An earth that had already been judged. Genesis 3.17 tells us plainly, "Cursed is the ground because of you." But could it be that the curse was not introduced in Genesis 3 but revealed that the very ground Adam was formed from had already tasted rebellion? Adam wasn't shaped in a sterile world. He was born into the aftermath of something ancient and divine. He wasn't the first human being, he was the first chosen one. Romans 5.14 calls Adam a type of the one to come, a shadow, a forerunner. Not the beginning, but the preview of redemption. God didn't start over with Adam, he started a rescue. God didn't start over with Adam, he started redemption. Everything about Adam's creation is different. Unlike other creatures who were called into being with words, Adam was shaped, breathed into, touched. Why? Because Adam wasn't just meant to exist. He was meant to carry purpose, to bear the image of God in a realm that had been violated by false thrones and fallen angels. Adam was divine strategy in dust. A new line, not hybrid, not corrupted, pure, intentional, and spirit-filled. He was placed in Eden, a sacred garden, yes, but also a boundary line between heaven's order and the echoes of a ruined world. He was given dominion not over chaos but over restoration. His assignment was not just stewardship, it was spiritual occupation. To multiply, to govern, and to guard. Guard from what, from whom, from what had already fallen, from who had already been cast down. From the whispers in the trees that did not come from the Creator. Adam was not naive, he was commissioned, placed in Eden to establish heaven's will on earth that remembered war. But he failed. The serpent deceived, the man ate, and once again dust returned to dust. Yet God did not abandon the plan. Because Adam was not the goal, he was the first stone in a foundation that pointed forward to a second Adam, a better Adam, an incorruptible one. The first man, Adam, became a living being. The last Adam became a life-giving spirit. 1 Corinthians 15:45. Adam wasn't the origin, he was the template, and everything that followed pointed toward the final prototype. If Adam was the beginning of redemption, Jesus was the fulfillment, and the war finally turned. Chapter 8. Christ, the last Adam. The first man, Adam, became a living being. The last Adam became a life-giving spirit. 1 Corinthians 15:45. Adam was the beginning of mankind, but he wasn't the end of the story. His failure introduced death. But death would not have the final word. Where Adam fell, Christ would stand. The Bible doesn't call Jesus a second Adam. It calls him the last Adam. Why? Because he wouldn't just repeat the pattern. He came to close it, to redeem not only what Adam lost in Eden, but what creation lost before Eden ever bloomed. Jesus came into a world still reeling from a cosmic fracture where the echoes of the Nephilim, the Watchers, and the serpents still infected the air. He came not only for men, but for the entire creation groaning to be set free. Romans 8:22. Adam was formed from the dust, but Christ stepped down from glory. Adam received breath. Christ was the breath of life. Adam hid in shame. Christ walked boldly toward the cross. Adam blamed. Christ bore. Adam unleashed a curse. Christ became a curse so we could be free. What Adam failed to guard, Christ came to reclaim. He didn't just come to save souls. He came to reclaim the garden, to restore the communion that once existed between God and man, and even more to restore creation to its intended destiny. In Eden, a sword turned in every direction, blocking man's path to the tree of life. But at Calvary, that sword pierced the side of the Son of God, and the veil was torn. Access was restored. Christ didn't just defeat death. He reversed it. He wasn't simply a better man. He was the culmination of the entire redemptive blueprint, reaching all the way back through Adam, through Noah, through Abraham, even beyond Genesis 1. His victory was cosmic. It wasn't just about forgiveness. It was about authority. That's why Revelation 5 shows the Lamb receiving the scroll, because he alone is worthy to open it. The same one who walked with Adam in the cool of the day is the same one who will reign over the new heavens and new earth. Christ did not just restore what we lost. He restored what we never even knew we had. The last Adam became the firstborn of a new creation. a people born not of the earth but of the Spirit. And now we are faced with the question: if Christ has reclaimed Eden, are we willing to enter it, or will we still cling to the ruins of the world? He died to redeem. In chapter 9 we go further. The forgotten war and your role in it. Because you weren't born into peace. You were born into a cosmic conflict that only Christ could win, but one you're still called to finish. Chapter 9. The Forgotten War. The Eternal Call. You weren't born in peacetime. You were born in the final chapter. The war that began before Adam. The rebellion that shattered heaven's harmony. The corruption that spread from angelic betrayal to human bloodline has never truly ended. It's still unfolding, and you are in it. This is the war no government reports, no news anchor covers. But it is more real than any battlefield because it's eternal. Ephesians 6 tells us clearly, for we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against rulers, against authorities, against cosmic powers over this present darkness. The enemy is not merely ideology, culture, or chaos. It is ancient, intelligent, intentional, and it remembers Eden. It remembers what was lost. It remembers what was sealed, and it fears what's coming. Because through Christ the war turned, but through you the war continues. The cross broke the curse, but the church enforces the victory. We are not passive observers. We are co-heirs, co-warriors, co-laborers in a kingdom that is advancing, not retreating. You are not here by accident. You were born into a story older than time and written by the very breath of God. From Genesis to Revelation, the Bible is not just a collection of moral lessons. It is the chronicle of a war for worship, a war for dominion, a war for your soul. You don't need to understand everything to be part of it. You just need to respond. Because while Eden has been lost to sight, it has not been lost to God. The tree of life still stands, not in a garden but in a city. A new Jerusalem descending from heaven where the curse is no more and the gates are never shut. Revelation 22 promises, "Blessed are those who wash their robes that they may have the right to the tree of life." And that includes you. You may feel broken. You may feel far from holy wars and angelic dramas. But you are part of it nonetheless. Because every choice, every allegiance, every prayer echoes in eternity. The same voice that called Adam from the dust now calls you into destiny. You were not meant to just survive history. You were meant to fulfill prophecy. So rise, stand, repent, believe, and walk the ancient path toward the garden that once was and the kingdom that soon will be. You may not see Eden, but you are invited into its eternal restoration. In the final chapter, you are not just a reader. You are being written into the story. And that leads us to the last message, not about angels or ruins or timelines, but about you. Your role in this ancient story. Because the question now isn't what happened before Adam. It's what you will do after hearing the truth. You've heard the story not just of Adam but of what came before him. You've walked through forgotten worlds, watched angels fall, witnessed giants rise, and seen a garden lost. But now the focus turns to you, because no matter how ancient the war, no matter how distant the Eden, the invitation is present and personal. You were not created for chaos. You were chosen for restoration. You are not just a descendant of Adam. You are the object of Christ's redemption, the one he bled for, the one he still calls. The war that began in heaven and raged through history is now being written in your life. And your choice is not about religion. It's about alignment, about who you trust, about what story you live in. So choose salvation, not because time is short, but because your life is sacred. You may be older, you may carry scars, but Eden wasn't a reward for the perfect. It was a dwelling place for the willing. God erased a world to write yours. You are not too late. If you're still breathing, you're still part of the plan. Thank you so much for watching. See you in the next video. If you like my channel, like and subscribe.